In a gigantic universe, countless stars shine amid vast and colorful cosmic clouds. But within this immensity there is an endless void, where an explosion of energy tears through the deep darkness. This universe is home to every type of being imaginable, from powerful wizards and reapers to advanced robots and dragons. Among the countless worlds, there is a fiery and desolate planet that can only be described as hell. This place houses the worst prison in history, a gigantic high-security fortress built for containment, and known as Solitude. It holds the most dangerous and feared criminals in the entire cosmos. Inside one of the cells, a small scorpion-like creature scurries across the cold metal floor. Suddenly, a large hand reaches down and grabs the little creature, lifting it off the ground. This hand belongs to a prisoner with long white hair, sitting alone in the darkness of his cell. Blindfolded, the man calmly brings the creature to his mouth, treating it like a simple meal. He chews for a moment, noticing only the bitter taste with a look of disregard. The prisoner sits quietly in his cell, lit only by a dim light from above. He then settles into a cross-legged position, keeping calm in the silent cell. Out of nowhere, a bright light pierces the darkness as a crack in the massive door illuminates. The heavy door slides open, flooding the small room with bright, particle-filled light. A guard waits as the prisoner floats, wondering if a month has already passed. The guard takes him out of the cell and into a vast, deep pit filled with machinery. The blindfolded man stands silently beside the armored guard, ready to be escorted. They both look up at the complex, imposing walls of the high-tech prison. Inside, the prison is a confusing maze of floating platforms and advanced structures. A long floating staircase materializes, creating a path upward through the mechanical abyss. The blindfolded prisoner climbs the shining steps with a steady stride, closely followed by the guard. And so unbelievable for the guard, who finds it very bizarre for a prisoner to lead the way without any help. He remembers his superiors telling him to simply accept this inmate's strange behavior and not resist. After all, the prison's structure changes every month, making any attempt to predict the layout futile. And this leaves the guard completely confused as to how the old man could know the right way. He watches the inmates back with a mixture of suspicion and admiration, unable to understand the situation. And so, the prisoner turns around and casually tells the guard to be careful on the way back, while the guard simply tells him to go inside. Once the transfer is complete, the guard reports to his superiors and asks for his current coordinates. The white-haired man, named Kun, now stands in a huge hall filled with countless other prisoners. He calmly surveys the large area, estimating its size at approximately 1,650 square meters. Immediately, a group of inmates notice the newcomer, pointing out that he looks like an old man. Another group, looking tougher, gives a little smile, thinking they won't need to pull any flashy blows on him. The other inmates are relieved, thinking he's just a regular old man and not another weirdo. This section of the prison, known as Solitude, houses the level inmates, who are categorized by class. Kun sniffs the air, sensing that all the inmates around him are of the lowest rank, second class at most. He kneels on the ground as a robotic figure walks past him, taking in the atmosphere of the place. However, he detects a special scent in the crowd, something that catches his attention. At that moment, a bright light descends from above, and all the prisoners begin to shout that the food has arrived. The old man watches the scene unfold, silently wondering when was the last time he had a real meal. The inmates stare at the descending meal with hungry eyes, murmuring that this time it is real food. They gather around a large, steaming cauldron, waiting for something edible to finally arrive. One prisoner complains, realizing it's maggot porridge again, but another tells him to eat it or starve. The scarred man rushes forward anyway, determined to get at least one bite of the disgusting meal. However, a giant pig-like inmate named Tommy gets in his way, declaring that he eats first. The other prisoners complain quietly, wondering how long the strongest will monopolize all the food. And so while Tommy and his group eat, the rest can only hope that there's something left for them. Nearby, a small boy tells his larger companion that he is hungry, and the young man tells him to hold on. So a different group complains about the horrible taste, but agrees that it's still better than nothing. The muscular young man watches the stronger inmates with a serious expression, his gaze fixed on them. At that moment, Kun starts walking towards the food, but one of the bullies tells the old man to stop. The blindfolded man calmly states that he just wants a bowl, asking for a little respect for his elders. A large, mustachioed man confronts him, asking if he doesn't know the rules for getting food. He looks down at the old man, wondering if he's senile or just trying to cause trouble. As Kun continues walking, the man grabs his shoulder, angrily asking if he is even listening, and the bully calls him a bandaged freak as a strange aura begins to radiate from the old prisoner. He asks mockingly how a blind man could have sniffed his way to the meal. In the blink of an eye, Kun moves with incredible speed, his form becoming a blur to all watching. The big bully is suddenly thrown back, screaming in agony over his eyes. The blindfolded man struck him with surgical precision, incapacitating him with a single, swift movement. Kun warns the others not to touch his eyes as the injured bully falls, defeated and bleeding. The muscular young man and the small boy stare in complete shock at the old man's sudden display of power. Even Tommy, the pig-like brute, stops eating and stares, amazed at the newcomer's skill. And furious, Tommy orders his gang to bring the old man to him, wanting to deal with him personally. Kun stands and sniffs the air again, oblivious to the growing crowd of hostile inmates. Meanwhile, in a control room, a high-ranking officer asks a guard what the old man just did. The guard reveals that the prisoner had just endured 30 days of solitary confinement, the harshest penalty. The officer appears unimpressed, noting that hundreds of inmates die every day in the prison. He then explains that a single cell in the facility can house several hundred people at a time. As he speaks, he signs a document, implying that the old man is much more dangerous than he seems. It is revealed that Kun had single-handedly killed all the inmates in his previous cell. Back in the common area, the prisoners are in an uproar, surrounding the blindfolded man with guns. Kun effortlessly dodges his attackers, countering their blows with deadly precision. He moves like a hurricane of destruction, striking down his opponents with a hidden blade. Back in the office, the commander explains that, although it seems unbelievable, the report is 100% true. In just one night, the old man killed a total of 241 people, leaving no survivors. The other inmates could only watch in horror, unable to comprehend the old man's true strength. The commander continues, adding another interesting fact about the prisoner known as Kun. He reminds the guard that every inmate at Solitude is given a serial number upon entry. With a sinister smile, he asks if the guard remembers what specific number that old man has. The guard recalls his interaction with the prisoner, remembering him only as number 51. The commander gives a small smile, telling the guard that, while he may be new, the inmate is infamous. The old man, whose real name is Argelastus, stands over the defeated pigman Tommy. All the other inmates could only stare in absolute shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. They murmur among themselves, wondering how a seemingly frail old man could do all that. Argel calmly sniffs the air as the beaten and bloodied Tommy kneels before him, utterly defeated. The muscular young man sweats, still trying to figure out the true identity of the mysterious old man. With a menacing red aura, Argel's presence fills the room, and a young man realizes he is here. The child looks with wide, terrified eyes, understanding the danger this man represents. Blood splatters across the old warrior's face, but his expression remains completely unreadable. Dozens of inmates lie on the ground, completely annihilated without putting up a real fight. Onlookers find it unbelievable that they were all taken down by just one person. However, the crowd soon realizes that all the defeated prisoners are still groaning in pain. Tommy breathes heavily, shocked to realize that none of his men are actually dead, and he looks at the mysterious figure, completely humiliated and wondering who this old man is. Argel asks if they really believe that having more people automatically means strength. He goes on to say that while numbers may work for some, they mean nothing when everyone is so weak. The old warrior then coldly informs Tommy that he probably only has a month or two to live. He then raises his single spiral blade, presenting the defeated brute with an offering. Argel tells him that if he wants to die before then, he must come find him. After the fight, the inmates line up in the cauldron, their shadows cast on the rocky floor, and Argel takes a bowl of the purple porridge, noting that he didn't even get that in solitary confinement. He walks away with his meal, his imposing figure causing the other prisoners to instinctively back away. Everyone eats their portion, and the muscular young man watches Argel from a safe distance. The young man thinks about the harsh reality of Solitude, a place where most prisoners do not survive. The prison employs several systems designed to torment inmates, making survival even more difficult. Because of these brutal conditions, anyone who manages to survive is someone to be wary of. The young man knows he must be wary of everyone, especially the mysterious and powerful old man. He remembers Argel's movements during the fight, recognizing that they were anything but ordinary. The boy Suro complains about the bad taste while his companion decides they should stay away from Argel. Suddenly the old warrior appears right behind them, startling the muscular young man. The young man grabs Suro and jumps away in a panic, wondering how the old man got there so fast. Argel sniffs the air again, his attention clearly focused on the two, particularly the boy. The old warrior detected a special scent, something he had noticed since he arrived. He turns his attention to Suro, his blindfolded gaze fixed on the red-eyed youth. Argel reveals that the boy has very special blood, which explains the unique scent he detected. The muscular young man becomes furious, demanding to know what the old man is talking about. Argel simply replies that instinct is the only thing that improves when you get as old as he is. The young man grits his teeth, his anger and protectiveness towards Suro increasing. He becomes angry with Argel if he tells anyone, his body glowing with a fierce red aura. And so Argel calmly states that revealing the secret would not benefit him, admitting that he just found it amusing. The young man decides to leave, telling Suro it is time to go, and the boy silently agrees. He puts a protective arm around Suro as they walk away, leaving the old warrior behind. The other inmates watch the interaction, still suspicious and confused by recent events. Suddenly, a huge column of golden light erupts from the ground, catching everyone's attention. and so inmate comments that the quarry prisoners must be returning as the light intensifies. A group of large, formidable beastmen emerges from the bright light, looking exhausted. A rhinoceros beastman named Rock complains about how tired he is after a long day of work. His companion, a bald eagle beastman named Horuk, quickly agrees with his sentiment. A third member of the group, a werewolf beast named Gork, remains silent with a stern expression, and so group then notices the blood splattered all over the floor, wondering what happened while they were gone. Horuk crouches down, noticing the large amount of blood and questioning the sudden chaos after a peaceful month. Manrock becomes furious, yelling about working all day and demanding to know who made the mess. He angrily orders the person in charge to show himself while the other prisoners watch nervously. Argel steps forward from the crowd, calmly admitting he caused the commotion and asking if there is a problem. The beastmen are surprised to see an old man, and one of them mockingly asks if he did all this alone. Manrock dismisses him as a crazy old man talking nonsense, clearly underestimating him. The blindfolded warrior stares back at the rhinoceros beastman, his expression firm and unyielding. Manrock loses his temper, claiming he has no time for games and moves in to attack Argel. However, Horuk watches with wide eyes, sensing immense danger radiating from the old man. Argel remains completely still, his calm creating a disturbing tension in the air. Horuk moves quickly to stop his companion, shouting at Manrock not to attack the old man. The rhinoceros beastman sweats, confused and intimidated by the powerful aura emanating from a simple old man. The eagle beastman begs Argel, promising that they will not harm him if he leaves them alone, and so Argel agrees, stating that he has nothing to do with them, as long as they don't start anything. He then turns and walks away, hoping he can finally live in peace as the beastmen watch him go. Horuk swallows hard, sweating profusely with a mixture of fear and relief after the tense confrontation. Suddenly a large glowing holographic symbol appears in the air, signaling a prison-wide announcement. A system voice declares that bedtime is beginning and orders all prisoners to lie on their backs. This is the anti-standing system, one of the 4 control methods used on Solitude, applied by their collars. The collars activate, increasing gravity and forcing each inmate to lie down on the floor. Any attempt to resist or stand up against the force results in a deadly electric shock called a spark. The prisoners sigh in resignation, knowing they have no choice but to lie down until morning. An inmate complains about total control while a strange little insect scurries across the floor. The bizarre, multi-eyed creature appears to be some sort of parasite, crawling through an inmate's veins. As they lay on the floor, Manrock called out to his companion, breaking the forced silence, and so he asks Horuk why he stopped him earlier, admitting that he didn't think the old man looked that strong. The eagle beastman explains that he saw something, leaving his friend confused as they lay down among the others. With a look of pure terror, Horuk reveals that he managed to see the old man's prisoner number. He confirms that it was number 51, causing Manrock to react with shock and utter disbelief. So Manrock is stunned, wondering how long the old man could have been in prison to have such a low number. Horuk speculates that the old warrior has likely been there since the prison's founding. He points out that the number was not marked with a class designation like the other inmates. It was just a simple number without any classification, a sign of his unique status in the prison. Horuk concludes that it is best to avoid someone who has survived Solitude for decades, but Manrock worries. The rhino beastman pounds the ground in frustration, arguing that the old man might hold a grudge. Suddenly, a strange noise catches their attention, and both beastmen look up in alarm. Screams fill the air as zombie-like inmates begin to violently attack those around them. While pinned to the ground by the gravity system, Manrock asks what's going on. The eagle beastman stares wide-eyed, identifying the terrifying creatures as zombies. Elsewhere, Argel is lying on the ground, simply complaining that the chaotic screams are too loud. The defenseless inmates are surrounded and bitten, their bodies torn apart by the horde of undead. Annoyed, Argel wonders if the bug room was open while he was in solitary confinement. Electricity crackles around his restraints as he clenches his fists, fighting the system. He forces himself to sit up despite the intense electric shocks, surrounded by approaching zombies. The old warrior slowly stands up, stating that he is wide awake now as lightning runs through his body. Suro and his companion watch in complete amazement at the man's incredible display of power. The young man fights against the gravity system, shocked by the sudden appearance of the zombies. He urgently tells Suro to crawl to a nearby rock for safety, but the boy hesitates in fear. Overcoming the pain, the young man forces himself to stand up, enduring the shocks to protect his young friend. With a determined growl, the young man prepares to fight, daring the zombies to come at him. His body transforms, becoming larger and more savage as he curses the approaching horde of undead. He jumps into the fray, vowing to take down every single zombie single-handedly, and the young warrior tears through the undead, crushing skulls with his new strength and ferocity. The beastmen also find themselves under attack, struggling to fight back against the zombies surrounding them. Manrock roars in frustration, fighting the undead while still being electrocuted by the anti-standing system. Horuk fights desperately against the endless waves, realizing that their numbers only continue to grow. As beastmen, they can resist the system to some extent, but the weaker prisoners are the real problem. Horuk knows that eventually all the weaker inmates will be turned into more zombies. Manhwa questions why zombies are not affected, and Horuk suggests that the system does not work on the dead. At that moment, an even larger horde of zombies begins to advance towards them from the darkness. The beastmen look on in horror as another wave of undead rushes to join the fight. And so the zombies are relentless, their grotesque faces contorted in hunger and mindless aggression. Manhwa curses, realizing his stamina is almost gone due to the constant electric shocks. Horuk suggests they lean against a rock to conserve energy and maintain their position. The ankle restraints continue to spark with electricity, draining the strength from every living inmate. Suddenly Arjul leaps into the air, surrounded by a whirlwind of crackling blue energy. He descends upon the horde like a bolt of lightning, landing right in the middle of the zombie swarm. The old warrior moves with blinding speed, cutting down the undead with ruthless efficiency. The beastmen could only look on in awe, once again shocked by the old man's incredible power. Arjul stands amidst the fallen zombies, leaving the remaining inmates completely speechless. He nonchalantly comments that at least they weren't taken down by the vampiric zombies. The beastmen sit on the ground, exhausted and still crackling with electricity from the system. Horuk asks the old man why he helped them, and Arjul simply replies that he didn't want to get angry. The eagle beastman understands, realizing that beastmen are much stronger than normal people. If they had turned into zombies, it would have been a huge headache, so Arjul intervened. At that moment, they realize that their companion, Gork the werewolf beast, has been transformed into a zombie. Menrock panics, shouting to Arjul that the newly transformed zombie is a powerful beastman. Arjul calmly stares at the zombified Gork, commenting that it's been a while since he last fought a werewolf beast. Without hesitation, the old warrior attacks, plunging his blade deep into the zombie's chest. The zombified werewolf beast recoils in pain but quickly retaliates with a ferocious attack. Arjul dodges easily, unimpressed by his strength and noticing his quick reaction speed. Horuk watches in disbelief, amazed that the old man can fight so effectively. Gork lets out a furious roar and lunges at Arjul, his massive fist poised to crush him. The old warrior moves with impossible grace, effortlessly dodging each of the zombies' attacks. And so your feet appear to float above the ground, your movements completely unrestricted by the system. Arjul dodges the werewolf beast's barrage of punches without being slowed down in the slightest. Horuk is completely confused, wondering how the blind man can move like that without even looking. The zombified werewolf beast suddenly transforms, its power growing several times stronger. It takes the form of a massive, monstrous werewolf dog, specifically a ferocious Doberman. Arjul calls the werewolf beast a fool, stating that simply becoming a werbeast changes nothing. He parries the creature's attack effortlessly, his movements fluid and precise. The old warrior approaches, preparing to deliver a decisive blow to the transformed zombie. He lands a powerful kick, sending the massive werewolf dog staggering back from the impact. Arjul explains that getting stronger only creates more openings, a lesson he is about to demonstrate. He moves at lightning speed, striking the werewolf dog with a devastating attack that ends the fight. Horuk's instincts scream at him, telling him that to survive in solitude, he must follow this man. He watches Arjul stand victorious over the fallen werewolf beast, surrounded by crackling energy. Arjul turns his attention to the young man, noticing that he is still resisting the zombies. The defeated werewolf beast cries weakly for help as he lies on the ground, his life ebbing away. Menrock calls out desperately to the old man, asking where he is going as he turns to leave. Arjul simply jumps away, leaving the beastmen and remaining inmates to fend for themselves. The young warrior struggles to protect Zero, cursing as the zombies continue their relentless attack. The boy, pinned to the ground, points and shouts that the old man is there, fighting. The young man looks up, his eyes widening in shock at the incredible sight before him. Arjul is fighting alone against the entire horde of zombies, a whirlwind of death and destruction. The young man stares in disbelief as one of his arms begins to mutate, becoming dark and monstrous. Arjul continues his attack, effortlessly slicing through the undead with his deadly blade. The young man is stunned, realizing that the old man has now taken down that entire horde of zombies as well. He could only stare at the result, wondering who in the world that mysterious old man could be. A holographic message appears, announcing that all inmates must stand up. The prison system declares the start of morning roll call. The results are grim, as the ground is covered with the bodies of the fallen. Of 94 mates, 80 are now dead, but Arjul sits calmly on a rock. Only 14 survivors remain, a small, battered group standing after the massacre. The system identifies your location as cell block 1257. At this moment, new prisoners begin to arrive. Looking around at the gloomy prison, a glowing portal activates, signaling that the cell block's population will be replenished. The newcomers seem nervous, absorbing the oppressive atmosphere of their new home. One of them wonders aloud what kind of place Solitude prison is. Their confusion turns to horror when they notice the smell and see the corpses. Meanwhile, the survivors are too exhausted to pay attention to the newcomers, and the few remaining inmates silently return to their own places in the Great Hall. The morning roll call ends in a heavy, hollow silence that fills the entire area. The cause of the outbreak is revealed to be a vampiric zombie flea, whose bite is fatal. Arjul claims that since all the zombies are gone, he should be safe now. He touches his blindfold, a thoughtful expression on his face. The old warrior then gets up and begins to walk away from his resting place, and the other inmates watch in shock, wondering what the old man is doing. They are stunned to see him heading towards an exit, as if the door were unlocked for him. Horuk warns the newcomers that if they want to die, they must follow the old man. He explains that everyone who has ever passed through that door has never returned, and so the ground outside the cell block is covered with the bones of those who tried to escape. The Eagle Beastman darkly states that something insane is lurking in the prison corridors. He believes that a creature capable of annihilating them all is waiting just beyond the door. Arjul walks down the dark corridor, seemingly unconcerned about the potential dangers. He feels that something beyond imagination is waiting for him out there. A small goblin-like creature carrying a large sack then appears before the old warrior. The creature greets him as Master, and Arjul says he was expecting this after hearing the noise. The blindfolded man agrees that it has been a long time since they last met. He then addresses the little creature by his name Jacob. Arjul asks if a guard told him he was here, and Jacob confirms that he paid 5 gold coins for the tip. Jacob complains about the greedy guard, but says it was a small price to pay to see his master again. Arjul cuts in asking if Jacob is here for the usual business. The goblin gets a serious look, mentioning that he is sure Arjul heard the news. He then asks about the change that occurred the day before yesterday. Jacob unrolls a large scroll, asking the old man to draw the new map for him. The change turns out to be a massive rearrangement of the prison structure. Because of these constant changes, memorizing any route through the prison is nearly impossible. Jacob thinks to himself that Arjul's ability to feel the new layout is truly insane. After a few moments, Arjul announces that the map is ready, and Jacob thanks him enthusiastically. The goblin then offers to take anything the old man needs from his magic bag. Arjul thinks for a moment and asks if his companion has any real food. Jacob takes out a large portion of cooked meat, admitting he is embarrassed to trade it for such a valuable map. He then tells the old warrior that he has some juicy information for him. Jacob reveals that a summoning is to take place in all lower cell blocks today. The two sit across from each other as the old man prepares to eat his meal, and so Arjul thanks him for the information, admitting that he can never predict when these events will happen. The goblin then nervously asks if those guys have been causing any trouble lately. It refers to a mysterious, hooded group that operates under a strange red symbol. Arjul reassures him that he has been quiet and tells him not to worry, so Jacob apologizes for intruding. With his business concluded, the goblin smiles and says he will retire now. Jacob bows and wishes him a safe return, and the old warrior tells him to be careful too. Arjul returns to his cell block, placing his hand on the rusted plate beside the door. He softly says the name Ken, which appears to be written on the sign. The old man realizes that Jacob must have been talking about the warden, who put him in this particular cell, and so he thinks it may have been for the best, as his health is improving, and he plans to receive his reward. Back in the common area, some inmates suddenly begin sniffing the air, noticing a new smell. One of them screams in excitement, realizing it is the smell of meat and demanding to know where it is coming from. The prisoners quickly spot Arjul with his bag of food, shocked to see real meat instead of warm mush. Some of the hungry inmates immediately lunge for the food, but are thrown back by a powerful explosion. Horuk steps forward protectively, warning the others not to lay a finger on the old man. Menrock roars in fury, demanding which of them he should beat first, and the inmates recognize him as a beastman. The other prisoners quickly retreat, leaving Arjul and his small group of allies alone, and the old warrior addresses the Eagle Beastman, who corrects him on the correct pronunciation of his name. Everyone stares at the large pile of steaming, cooked ribs, a rare sight in the prison. Menrock drools, asking the master how he got such a delicious meal. Ciro's eyes gleam with hunger and excitement, taking his companion by surprise. Arjul ignores the question, simply telling everyone to eat before the food gets cold. After they finish eating, Horuk thanks the old warrior for the meal and for his help the day before. The blindfolded man tells him there is nothing to thank him for, his expression turning grim. He explains that in a place like this, even being alive can eventually become a curse. However, he admits that he could still feel their desperation as they fought for their lives. He sits down in front of them, stating that he wants to ask them something about surviving in this hellish place. He then asks the small group of survivors if they really want to get out of Solitude alive. Menrock immediately responds that of course he does, explaining that it is a natural survival instinct. Arjul then asks a difficult question, asking if they would still follow that instinct if he begged them to die. He explains that this is what isolation does, and asks again if they really want to live. The Rhinoceros Beastman clenches his fist, declaring that he will not die uselessly in a place like this. With a look of determination, he also states that he wants to live. Ciro adds that he wants to survive so he can return home and see his father again. Arjul sits across from them, his expression unreadable as he processes their determination. The old warrior thinks of his own 66-year-old promise that he is determined to keep. He knows his time is running out, and having more allies will only increase his chances of success. And having made up his mind, the elder tells the small group to prepare for what is to come. He then reveals that there will be an invocation sometime today. Meanwhile, other inmates are tasked with the grim work of removing the bodies. One complains about the horrible task, but the other reminds him that it is necessary to prevent disease. They sadly conclude that their only crime in this place is being weak, and the two look with horror and disgust at the huge amount of corpses they have to move. A massive pile of bodies serves as a grim reminder of why Solitude is called the worst prison in the universe. One mentions a rumor that an old man once killed everyone, but his friend dismisses it as a lie. And so suddenly, a bright golden light appears, and they see something coming out of it. Strange, grotesque creatures with stone faces emerge, drooling and licking their lips. The nearby prisoners stare in utter terror, wondering what new monsters these are. The creatures begin to advance, causing the inmates to panic and run away screaming. Horrok nervously asks Arjul if these are the summoned beasts he was talking about. The old warrior sits calmly on his rock and tells his new ally not to worry. He explains that these creatures are just janitors, here to clean the cells. An inmate, feeling relieved, kicks one of the creatures, calling it disgusting for scaring them. Arjul adds that if attacked, the creatures will become angry, and the inmate is thrown away by an explosion. The old warrior then turns to Horok and asks about the thing he had asked him earlier. The eagle beastman confirms that he has taken care of everything, and is even doing extra work as a precaution. Arjul is satisfied with the answer and tells his new allies that it is time to go back and prepare. And elsewhere, the two inmates in charge of cleaning are still pacing, feeling sick from their grim task. One calls the other dramatic, but his friend explains that he has seen corpses but never seen them rot. His partner tells him to hold on, but the other inmate stops suddenly, his eyes wide with shock. In the distance, another, much larger summon begins, engulfing the area in a massive pillar of fire. A monstrous two-headed lizard emerges from the flames, leaving the inmates completely stunned, and someone screams in terror, realizing the creature is a deadly fire-breathing dragon. The prisoners stare in disbelief, wondering what kind of monster has been summoned into their cell block. The two-headed dragon looms menacingly, its presence filling the entire hall with dread. Flames begin to gather in the creature's mouths, signaling an imminent and devastating attack. The inmates are frozen in fear, their eyes wide with terror as they watch the beast prepare its attack. A massive fireball erupts from its mouth, instantly engulfing one of the prisoners in a fiery explosion. The sight breaks their paralysis, and the remaining inmates begin to scream and run for their lives. The dragon continues its attack, raining a relentless storm of fire from above, and cell block is thrown into chaos as the prisoners desperately try to escape the spreading inferno. And the fire attack is devastating, and one inmate notes that half the prisoners in one area have been burned to death. Horok watches the destruction in horror and asks Arjul if this is the summoning he was talking about. Arjul curses, realizing they summoned the worst monster possible. He remembers Jacob's warning that the monster being summoned was the fire-breathing cursed dragon. Menrock complains about the intense heat, wondering if they can even take down the beast, and the old warrior reassures them, saying that the trap they have set will do its job very well. He then tells them that if they follow his instructions, they will not die, and warns them that the dragon is coming. The massive creature falls to the ground, its fiery body sending sparks flying everywhere. Arjul gives his first command, telling everyone to remember what he is about to say. He explains that a second after he opens his mouth, he releases a 10-meter jet of fire. The old warrior instructs them to immediately hide behind a rock when they see the dragon. The group quickly takes cover as a massive blast of fire erupts from the creature's mouth. The young man holds Suro protectively, watching the dragon's every move, and so they realize that their preparations of gathering rocks and building a flame shield have paid off. Menrock complains, asking the old man for a warning next time. The Reno beastman then yells for Horok to switch with him, but the eagle beastman refuses. Suro brings the eagle beastman a small container of water he collected, and Horok thanks him. The old warrior tells him to mix it with earth and throw the mud at the dragon when he is distracted. Menrock prepares a large pile of rocks, ready to throw them at the beast. Arjul explains that even a fire-breathing dragon still needs to breathe like any other creature. He reveals that this particular dragon actually breathes through its skin. The mud covers the dragon's body, causing it to suffocate and freeze in place, unable to see. Arjul walks towards the immobilized dragon, his blade glowing with an ominous red light. He unleashes a barrage of attacks, tearing the massive creature apart in a bloody display of power. The old warrior reflects that to survive in isolation, one must become a monster. The remaining prisoners stare in shock as the fighting finally stops, wondering if it's over, and they can hardly believe they managed to take down such a powerful beast. The group of survivors stands over the dragon's corpse, their teamwork having paid off. Suro looks at his companion, an expression of shock and confusion on his face. Arjul comments that everyone was ready to face death, but the danger is not over yet. To their horror, another invocation begins, and the inmates scream in despair. Arjul remains calm, stating that he is also speaking from instinct and is ready for whatever comes. This time, more than 10 fire-breathing dragons are summoned, filling the hall with a fiery glow. The group looks on in terror, wondering if they can survive against such overwhelming odds, and the dragons let out a deafening roar, their collective power shaking the entire cell block. Argel turns to face the new threat, his expression grim as he assesses the situation. The real problem is that the dragons have cut off their escape, trapping them in a sea of fire. The old warrior calmly says no, stating that it would be impossible to keep everyone alive this time. Horuk questions his master's decision, knowing things could be even worse in the halls. Menrock panics, shouting that it's more dangerous outside and questioning the plan. The eagle beastman tells his friend to calm down, reminding him that the safest place is beside the old man. As he speaks, one of the dragons charges forward, its massive head bearing down on the rhinoceros beastman. As the dragon attacks, Argel growls, preparing to intervene. He leaps through the air with incredible speed, his body a blur against the fiery backdrop. The old warrior lands a powerful blow, saving Menrock from the dragon's attack at the last second. Argel turns to the stunned rhino beastman, reminding him that he didn't want to die senselessly, and so he then orders everyone to move, saying they have no time to waste as he leads the way. The small group quickly follows him, entering the dark and sinister corridor. Horuk sweats nervously, unable to see clearly and realizing that this is the dangerous corridor he heard about. The old warrior warns everyone to be alert, as they may encounter other inmates here, and so he explains that a third or fourth class prisoner could kill them in the blink of an eye. The eagle beastman volunteers to stay behind and protect their backs, using his superior vision. Argel agrees, but gives him a stern warning to never stray from the group for any reason, and as Horuk follows behind, his sixth sense tells him that something very far away is watching him. He begins to question whether they are truly safe in this dark, foreboding corridor. The eagle beastman's senses scream at him, confirming that there is definitely something else in the hallway. He calls out to his master, suggesting that they should return to the relative safety of the cell. A look of pure terror spreads across Horuk's face as he stares into the darkness. In the distance, a tall, slender figure appears, a single beam of red light shining from its eye. Menrock panics, shouting for Horuk as the rest of the group continues down the corridor. Argel tells him to be quiet, warning that shouting will only invite more danger. The old warrior calmly explains that among the dangers are ghostly beings that can change position freely. The rhinoceros beastman sweats, disturbed by the idea of facing real ghosts. The elder explains that anything imaginable exists in this dangerous corridor. Menrock is torn, unable to disbelieve what he saw but still worried about finding his friend, and so Argel reassures him, saying there is no need to worry about finding a mere sparrow, even though he is a bald eagle. Meanwhile, Horuk finds himself alone in a seemingly endless corridor. This mysterious place was built by great magicians and genius architects to be inescapable. He can hardly believe he was left behind in such a dangerous and confusing place. The eagle beastman suddenly senses something approaching and prepares for a fight. A massive, muscular figure advances towards you, his footsteps shaking the ground. Horuk stares in horror at the approaching beast, his eyes wide with fear, and so realizes with a shock of terror that the creature running toward him is an ogre. The massive beast swings its club, and the eagle beastman barely manages to dodge the attack. He knows he needs to stay alert if he wants to survive this encounter. The ogre delivers a powerful blow to the ground, but Horuk leaps into the air to avoid the shockwave. He is thrown away by the force of the attack, slamming hard against the corridor wall. The eagle beastman knows he cannot face such a powerful creature alone. His survival instincts kick in, screaming at him to run away as fast as he can. Just as Horuk is about to flee, he finds himself surrounded by two more ogres. He curses his ill luck, his feathers ruffled as he prepares for a desperate fight. The eagle beastman knows that the moment he is caught, he will be torn to pieces. He is forced to dodge a relentless barrage of attacks from the three massive beasts. With a cry of despair, he leaps into the air, determined not to die in this place. However, one of the ogres manages to grab him, its massive hand closing around his body. As the beast prepares to eat him, Horuk wonders if his life is about to end in such a meaningless way. Suddenly, a new figure appears, landing a powerful blow on the ogre's head. It's a pig-like beastman who arrived just in time to save the eagle beastman. He lands gracefully, ready to face the remaining ogres alone. Horuk is stunned, completely confused by this unexpected turn of events. The newcomer explains that with a bold attack, they successfully seized the initiative. He then introduces himself, announcing himself as player Becky, and preparing to fight. The pig-like warrior unleashes a barrage of attacks, shouting baseball terms as he fights. He moves with surprising speed and agility, taking on the massive beasts with his trusty club. After a short but intense battle, he prepares to deliver the final blow. He lands a devastating uppercut, taking the ogre's head off in a double play. Horuk is speechless, amazed that two ogres could be defeated so easily. Player Becky then hits a two-run home run, finishing off the last ogre in style. He then celebrates his victory, enjoying the fruits of his labor while eating the fallen ogre. Horuk stares at his savior, his mind spinning at the sudden turn of events. He recognizes the number 4 on the pigman's clothing, identifying him as a level 4 prisoner. Realizing he has no other choice, the eagle beastman begs the stranger for help. The pigman asks what his deal is, and Horuk begs for his life, desperate not to die. Becky is amused, but suddenly he sniffs the air, his expression changing. He grabs Horuk, demanding to know who he is and why he smells like the blind old man. The pigman's demeanor becomes menacing as he demands an answer, and Horuk nervously mentions Lord Algiers. At that moment, two more figures appear, and one of them calls out to Becky. The eagle beastman is stunned, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. The newcomer scolds Becky for going out alone, reminding him of how many times he has been warned. He then reveals that he knows Becky caught the ogres, seeing it as a blessing from the gods. The group is amazed, astonished that they managed to capture such dangerous creatures. Horuk and Becky are then confronted by a group of 4 powerful level 4 prisoners. The eagle beastman is terrified, realizing it was much safer back in the cell, and a fierce battle takes place in the hallway, the clash of powerful inmates echoing throughout the prison. Argel appears, having finally reached his destination. He tells everyone to stop, and Menrock asks if he found Horuk, and the old warrior tells them to come closer and look at the area below. The group stares in shock at the scene unfolding before them. A massive, spider-like monster is feasting on the corpses of the fallen inmates, and Horuk is among them. Argel explains that the monster is strong enough to easily kill a level 5 prisoner. He reveals that all the ghosts in the hallway have names, and this one is called decapitation. The old warrior nods, his expression grim as he observes the creature below. He explains that he has this name because his main method of killing is cutting off heads. The monster's menacing, multi-eyed face and sharp fangs fill the group with dread, so Argel warns them to be careful, as there is no longer a safe zone now that they have seen him. He says they were lucky they weren't seen, as they would have all been massacred. The old warrior asks if they are afraid, and Menrock admits that the corridor is not a good place for a walk. When Argel suggests turning back, the rhino beastman refuses, not wanting to leave his friend behind, and so the elder is satisfied with his answer and tells him to continue looking for his friend. The young man asks if they can really find him, and Argel reassures him not to worry. Elsewhere, Becky violently interrogates Horuk, demanding to know his connection to the old man. One of the other level 4 prisoners asks what's wrong, noticing the commotion. Becky explains she smelled that old man on this stranger, confirming her suspicions. One of his companions, a zombie-like man named Arak, begins to panic, realizing he might die. The leader of the group tells Arak not to be afraid, as the old man is not there. He then tells Becky that he just wants to talk to the eagle beastman for a bit. The leader warns him not to go too far, and Becky complains about losing her chicken dinner. The red-haired woman in the group tells Horuk not to be too afraid, as they are not capable of hurting him. She then reveals that in isolation, many are targeting a man named Argel. The woman warns him that being with Argel means getting involved with dangerous beings, a fate that dozens of lives could not bear. The eagle beastman sweats nervously, his eyes wide as he asks what kind of beings she is talking about. She describes them as monsters so terrifying they cannot even be looked at directly, warning him to be careful. The woman then begins to channel a powerful energy, surrounding herself in a warm, golden light. Horuk is amazed when his wounds heal instantly. She explains that she also recited a prayer to calm his mind and tells him to return safely, and she wishes him the constellation's blessings as her group departs, and the eagle beastman gratefully thanks her for her help. With his strength restored, Horuk finds he can move again and begins the long walk back into the darkness. After a while, he hears familiar footsteps in the distance, and his eyes fill with tears of overwhelming relief, and he finally reunites with Menrock and the others, who are all overjoyed to see that he is still alive. The rhinoceros beastman thanks the old warrior profusely, and Horuk bows his head in gratitude, confirming that he is now safe. Argel asks if a level 4 prisoner treated him, and Horuk says yes, adding that the person believed in the constellation of light, which relieves the elder. The young man hears the phrase "stars in the sky," comments that it sounds familiar, and asks Zero if he remembers what he said to him. He explains that there are divine beings in the cosmos, such as the angelic constellation of light and the demonic stars of the void of darkness, and he adds that most followers, whether of the light or the dark, are fanatics who truly believe in a guaranteed afterlife. The young man concludes that even in a place like Solitude, the inmates' beliefs are divided between different gods. Zero realizes that Horuk met one of them, while Argel notes that the eagle beastman has potential to grow after surviving the dangerous corridor, and so as Menrock thanks him again, Argel tells them to live with motivation, mentioning that he has trained many powerful before. He remembers training formidable warriors, stating that although the process takes time, it is not a difficult task for him. However, the old warrior's only major concern is that he doesn't have much time to carry out his plans. He grits his teeth in frustration, realizing that his rapidly dwindling time is a serious problem. Argel suddenly yells for everyone to run at full speed, his expression dark and determined. As they flee, a massive explosion of fire erupts right behind them, signaling the arrival of a new threat, and a slender, terrifying monster with glowing red eyes and blade-like limbs drops from above. The entire group looks back in absolute horror, their faces pale with shock and fear at the sight of the creature. The monster lands with a deafening crash, and the young man tells Siro to hold on tight as he urges everyone to run. Horrok shouts to Menrock, asking what that thing is, and the rhinoceros beastman stammers that it is the decapitator. The creature, known as the decapitator, relentlessly pursues them down the dark, desolate corridor. The young man grits his teeth, remembering the old warrior's warning that even level 5 prisoners are easily killed by that thing. He realizes that this is a far greater danger than the ogres they feared before, and tells his panicked companion to just run. Argel effortlessly lifts both the young man and Siro, warning that being caught by the monster means instant death. The old warrior knows he cannot lose his new allies here and decides he must lure the creature away himself. As the decapitator strikes again, landing right behind them, the young man screams that he can't take it anymore. Argel points to a narrow passage, instructing the group to enter for temporary safety, and the monster roars in frustration as it tries to follow them, but finds the entrance too narrow for it to fit through, and the elder tells them that this is just the beginning and instructs the eagle beastmen to lead the others to the cells via a divided path. Argel states that he will lure the creature elsewhere, and Horok looks back with a determined expression, understanding his role. The decapitator begins to violently slam its bladed limbs against the narrow opening, tearing through the metal wall. It becomes clear that the monster intends to force its way through with sheer brute force, and the group panics. And as soon as the wall explodes, Argel yells for them to go, running in the opposite direction to attract the decapitator's attention. The rest of the group finally reaches a safe area, collapsing in exhaustion as Menrock asks if they really escaped, and so the young man suggests they go back and fight alongside the old warrior, but Menrock says the corridor is full of those things. Once the Rhino beastman agrees that they can't just leave him behind, Horok firmly says no. He explains that the old man has lived alone in this prison for much longer than any of them could imagine, and so, this means that he fought countless ghosts, and they would just be a burden that he couldn't survive if they returned. And so the Eagle Beastman reminds them that their job is to get to the cells as quickly as possible, and the group reluctantly agrees to leave. Meanwhile, the decapitator taunts Argel, offering to cut off his legs so they won't hurt anymore. The monster continues his mockery, suggesting he leave a will, but the old man asks if he hates him so much that he wants him dead. Argel pretends not to understand, calmly asking how he could have tricked the creature. The decapitator roars in fury, accusing him of breaking a promise to play rock, paper, scissors from over 4 years ago. As the monster rages, the old warrior's expression turns serious, realizing that something is wrong with this ghost. He knows ghosts are mentally unstable, so his clear memory means someone he knows sent him. He thinks of a name, Saddle. The creature seems confused by the word, repeating the name and asking what it means. Argel remembers that Saddle was just a kid 5 years ago, and now he's amazed that he can control ghosts. A new voice speaks through the monster, impressed that the elder noticed his hidden mark, and the old warrior scoffs, asking if his opponent has forgotten that his eyes missed nothing and revealing that he was merely testing him. In a burst of red energy, a necromancer of the demon worshippers appears, confirming that his name is Saddle. Argel says that even after 5 years, Saddle still hasn't realized they're on completely different levels. The necromancer sneers through the monster, declaring that this time will be different as he lunges to attack. However, the elder moves with blinding speed, creating multiple images of himself to effortlessly dodge the attack. The monster roars in frustration, confident that after 5 long years, he will finally be the one to defeat it. Saddle boasts that after 5 years, he even gained the ability to control the dangerous ghosts in the hallway. So, he is confident that not even the old man can escape this attack from the powerful creature under his command. The necromancer explains that the decapitator is a grade 5 monster, a level of power few can withstand. With this ghost, he claims he can now kill even the strongest grade 5 inmates with absolute ease. He urges the old warrior to give up and join his cause, offering to spare his life as a reward for his surrender. But the elder simply scoffs, dismissing the passage of 5 years as completely irrelevant to their struggle. He reveals that he endured 60 long years in solitude, making his opponent's experience seem trivial. Argel stands firm against the monster's attack, unimpressed by the power his foe has acquired. He calmly calls the necromancer a novice, still very inexperienced despite his new skills, and so the veteran questions whether Saddle really thinks his 5 years of fighting can compare to his own 60 years of survival. Enraged by his words, Saddle yells at him to stop talking nonsense, refusing to accept the truth. In one swift movement, Argel closes the distance and parries the monster's blade with a powerful counterattack. He tells Saddle that after all this time, the stage he has finally reached is merely a way of measuring degrees, a superficial understanding of true power. The elder follows up with a devastating punch, landing squarely in the decapitator's jaw. He tells the young necromancer that for his next lesson, he must learn to see the true essence of power. With a final brutal blow, Argel demonstrates the brute force of his experience. The monster's head explodes upon impact, a clear demonstration of the vast difference in its class. The old warrior stands calmly over the body of the defeated monster, the battle decisively won. He looks at a glowing red symbol on the creature's remains, identifying it as the ghost control mark. Arjul holds the monster's severed hair, claiming it will be a message to the devil worshippers. With a final, decisive blow, he completely destroys the control mark, severing the necromancer's connection. And so meanwhile, the group makes their way through the dark corridor, realizing how difficult it is to navigate without their leader. Horuk asks if they are on the right path, as finding their way through the confusing corridor is nearly impossible on their own. Menrock worries if the old man is okay after the loud noise they heard, but the young man believes his leader has a plan. Suddenly Suro spots a light ahead and points it out to the others, just as Arjul appears and calls them late. The group is shocked to see him, wondering how he managed to escape the ghost and slip past them without being seen. The elder ignores their questions, telling them to enter the cell quickly, as the danger has passed. He explains that the fire-breathing dragons have finished their hunt and left the hall, but the group is still confused. Entering the cell, Suro stares in horror at the scene before him, his face pale with shock. The only things left inside the cell are the charred, blackened corpses of the other inmates. The young man runs to Suro's side, asking if he is okay as the boy covers his face in distress. The old warrior places a comforting hand on Suro's shoulder, telling him to accept the harsh reality of solitude. The boy looks up with tearful eyes, wondering if the weak are simply destined to die in this place. The elder calmly tells him no, explaining that in a prison like this, anyone could die at any moment. The grim scene serves as a stark reminder of what solitude truly is, a place where countless prisoners arrive and die daily. Their lives are lost regardless of their rank, personality, abilities, or connections to the outside world. And so in this brutal prison, the only certainty for most is that they will eventually die. That's all. Menrock faces the macabre aftermath, cursing the hellhole they are trapped in. He somberly notes the endless cycle of death and replacement, just as the hour of roll call approaches, heralding new arrivals. A system announcement declares the start of morning roll call, revealing that only 5 of the 95 inmates have survived. Due to extreme staffing shortages in cell block 157, the remaining survivors will be relocated. The group looks on in shock and confusion, completely caught off guard by the sudden announcement. A bright golden light surrounds them and Suro screams in panic as his companion tells him to calm down. Arjul quickly warns them to listen carefully, as they may be separated after the forced transfer. The inmates are separated by the powerful light and Menrock screams in surprise as he is forcibly separated. The old warrior gives them one last piece of advice, telling them to run towards the sea if they land in a jungle. Horuk yells in confusion, wondering why there would be a jungle in a high-tech prison. The transfer is complete, leaving the remains of his former cell block empty and desolate. Arjul finds himself in a new cell, disappointed that everyone was separated, especially the one he thought had potential. And to his surprise, the only one who came to the new cell with him was the young man Suro. The elder understands that the director's intention is clear, sending a message to simply manage the merchandise that has been given to him. And he knows he'll meet the director soon, but until then, he plans to raise the boy and get what he needs. The old warrior surveys his new surroundings, noting that this cell is 4 times larger and holds about 300 prisoners. A shadowy figure in the distance notices their arrival, pointing the newcomers to his companion. So a group of rough-looking inmates mockingly comment on the old man and the kid who have just been summoned. One of them suggests enslaving them both, while another comments on the boy's good age, calling it the sweet spot. They stare at Suro with hungry eyes, commenting that the young man is ready to be caught. Suro hides behind the elder, nervously pointing out that the other prisoners have strange, predatory eyes. Arjul calmly advances, telling the greedy inmates to stop right there and back off. At that moment, a red-haired woman named Rosanne appears with her gang, and the other inmates stammer her name in fear. And she mocks Arjul for acting arrogantly without an affiliation and coldly tells him to disappear immediately. As the previous group flees, Rosanne watches them go before ordering her own men to bring the young man to her. One of his subordinates steps forward and grabs Suro, who screams in fear as he hides behind the old man. The boy panics, his eyes wide with terror as he tries to resist being taken by the large inmate. He looks at the old man, confused and scared, wondering why he is just standing there without helping him. The henchman drags Suro away as the boy struggles, begging to be let go while the man tells him to be quiet. Suro's fear intensifies, his wide eyes showing the sheer terror he feels at being torn away from his protector. Suddenly, the inmate is struck by an invisible force, causing him to stumble forward and lose control of the child. The man is stunned, wondering what just happened, while Rosanne demands to know what her subordinate just did. The red-haired leader scolds her henchman, angrily asking why he can't even do his job properly, and she reminds him that the boy is a product entrusted to her by the director, but the man insists he did nothing. The henchman looks at Suro in complete confusion, still trying to process the sudden, invisible attack. In the background, Arjul watches with a calm and indecipherable expression, his intervention having gone unnoticed. A fierce red aura suddenly erupts from Siro as his body begins to transform, his features becoming more feral, and the other inmates recoil in shock as the transformed boy now stands before them, ready to fight. Roseanne smirks, amused by the sight and noticing that he's even wagging his tail, deciding he's worth raising. She orders her men to hurry and capture the boy, but they hesitate, now intimidated by his new form. The transformed Siro lunges at the man who grabbed him, his face contorted into a ferocious snarl. He lands a devastating blow, knocking the large inmate backward with incredible force. Siro growls at the man, warning him to behave himself as he cannot kill him, a promise he made to the old man. Enraged, the henchman advances to attack, but the transformed boy easily overpowers him. Another of Roseanne's subordinates runs over, scolding his comrade for being so disgraceful. He lunges to attack Siro, but the boy's feral instincts take over, and he easily counterattacks. The new attacker is thrown away, colliding with his ally while Roseanne's men prove unable to catch a single brat. The executioner then turns his attention to Arjul, demanding to know what the old man is doing and telling him to get lost. He raises his hand to attack, but the elder effortlessly catches his arm, stopping him in place. In a single, fluid motion, Arjul throws the large man over his shoulder, slamming him hard into the ground. He then lands a quick, decisive blow, knocking the man out with a single punch. The old warrior stands over the fallen bodies, leaving Roseanne and her remaining men completely stunned. The red-headed leader is impressed, her eyes fixed on the blindfolded man's display of power. Arjul looks at the unconscious Siro, noting that, although he has lost his mind, he is no match for a Class 2 prisoner. He thinks the boy is not without talent and could become much more valuable in his hands, making him worth raising. Roseanne approaches, mocking the elder for standing there dazed after touching one of her children, assuming he is fearless because of his age. The woman smiles menacingly, stating that at his age, the only thing to fear is death, and she will give him one more thing to fear today. And she leaps into the air, her whip cracking as she threatens to tie him up so he can't move a muscle. The red-haired woman lands, promising to peel off his skin one slice at a time with her whip. Just as she prepares to attack, a massive figure lands between them, shouting that enough is enough. Roseanne is irritated by the flashy entrance, telling the newcomer not to get in her way as she found the old man first. A large muscular man with a strange symbol on his forehead now stands before them, his presence intimidating. The newcomer tells Roseanne it's time to retreat, but she scoffs, questioning who he thinks he is to give her orders. The red-haired woman declares that she is always prepared for war, and that it would happen eventually. The big man stands his ground, stating that if she won't back down, neither will he. Roseanne mocks him for being clever, noting that he has her surrounded on all sides with no escape route. The man tells her not to fall for all the provocations, reminding her that if they fight, it's exactly what Beckham wants. Defeated, she walks away with her gang, promising to make him regret this one day. The man is relieved that she has retreated for now, and the elder asks if he was the one who saved him in the jungle a year ago. And so the newcomer smiles, confirming that the old warrior's memory is correct, though he may have forgotten the encounter. And so Arjul admits he doesn't remember, but the man insists he helped him that day and hasn't forgotten. And so the elder realizes it must have been during the liberation, where he unintentionally helped while hunting natives. The man kneels before him, declaring that even though time has passed, the fact that he has been saved does not change. He orders his own men to bow their heads, introducing the old warrior as their new boss. The large man and his entire gang bow in respect, calling out to their new leader. Arjul could only scratch his head, surprised by this sudden and unexpected turn of events. At this moment, Siro screams in pain from a nightmare, begging for it to stop. The boy tosses and turns in his sleep, his mind still reeling from the traumatic events of the day. The large man, whose name is Margan, watches with concern before suggesting they continue the briefing. He explains that they are in cell 3498, and there are currently 3 main factions inside. The first is the one he leads, known as the Axe, or the Margan Circle. The second is the Circle of the Whip Witch, Roseanne, the group they encountered moments ago. And the third is the Swordsmen, Beckham Circle, a group they haven't met yet. Margan reveals that all the circle leaders, including himself, are powerful Class 3 prisoners. These 3 circles currently hold the balance of power, and they are all preparing to liberate one by searching near the cells. Arjul notes that Margan has adapted very well to solitude, and the man credits his survival to being able to form a small circle. The elder thanks him for the valuable information and says he will rest now, and Margan offers to bring him food. As Margan leaves, Arjul calmly eats a bug, his expression unreadable as Siro watches him silently. The boy asks if the old man didn't help him before because he is weak and not needed. And so, the elder points out that Siro has no memory of his brief awakening and says that if he had been abandoned, they wouldn't be together now. He then asks if the boy is scared, and Siro admits that he is, feeling useless without his companion, Lucas. The young man says he is too weak to be of any use, but the old warrior says he has it all wrong. Arjul explains that being strong or weak is not for them to decide but for the one they face. The elder states that he wants Siro to survive in solitude and is willing to help him achieve that. He offers to teach the boy how to drive out the darkness from his heart and become truly strong. Siro is stunned by the offer, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disbelief at the old man's words. But before they can begin, the elder says he must eat first, much to the boy's confusion. The old warrior asks if Siro knows what he fears most in this desolate prison. He reveals that his greatest fear is hunger, as there is nothing more painful than starvation. Argel presents him with a bowl of insects, explaining that one cannot grow strong on an empty stomach, a reality he must accept. He tells the boy that if he really wants to become strong, he must eat, no matter how disgusting the food may be. With a look of pure determination, Siro declares that he too will become strong and begins eating the insects. And elsewhere, a group called the Losna Circle notices that their leader, Lady Losna, has gone to make her regular report. In a dark chamber, a hooded figure bows before a glowing red orb reporting its progress. And so, she confirms that they have collected about half of the live specimens and believes the next phase will be completed on time. And so the voice from the orb asks if anything unusual has occurred, and she says no, although the elderly and children have been moved. The orb dismisses his concerns, but then asks for more details about the elderly inmates. The woman remembers that her eyes had a mysterious light, and they move towards the chaos as if they were drawn to it. The voice asks if this is true, and she confirms that there is no mistake, wondering who it could be. A dragon-like fiery entity emerges from the orb, declaring that it will go there personally to investigate. The woman is surprised by this decision, but offers to capture the old man for her master before he arrives, and the demon leader agrees, giving him permission to do whatever he wants with the prisoner. With the authority granted to her, the woman yearns to capture the powerful old man. Now back in her usual attire, the red-haired woman vows to capture all the prey her master desires and present them to him. Back in the cell, Argel and Siro sit facing each other, meditating and channeling their inner energy. They sit in silent concentration, the atmosphere calm and focused as their training begins. The elder tells the boy it is time to begin, instructing him to close his eyes and breathe slowly. So Siro follows his instructions, determined to become stronger and survive the horrors of prison. Argel explains that fists and techniques are meaningless, because what he needs to learn is something much more fundamental. And the elder tells him to take a deep breath and exhale slowly, focusing on the darkness covering his vision. As you do this, a surge of energy appears, a sign of your growing control over your inner self. And so the old warrior explains that they will now enter their inner self, and their spirit form floats out of their body. The elder's spirit watches over Siro, instructing him to keep his breathing steady and slow. At his command, the boy opens his eyes, finding himself in a strange, dark, and unfamiliar place. He calls out to the old man, confused and scared as he looks around the void, and the elder's voice reassures him, telling him to calm down, for he is right there with him. He reveals that this strange place is the inside of Siro's own mind, his inner self. Argel explains that to become strong, he must first confront the darkness in his heart and instructs him to step forward. And Siro takes that first step. He is suddenly enveloped in a bright warm light, a vision of his past. He sees a happy memory of his family, his younger self being held lovingly in his mother's arms. Tears stream down his face as he is overcome by the powerful emotions of this long-lost memory. The elder's voice gently tells him that it is enough and instructs him not to look down anymore. He tells Siro to focus on his voice and exhale slowly, and the boy tries his best to follow the command. But the vision is too powerful, and his consciousness begins to fade as he is pulled deeper into the memory. Siro gasps for air, his feral instincts taking over as he struggles to free himself from the overwhelming sight. So back in the real world, Argel commends him for doing well in his first time confronting the darkness within, and so reminds the boy to never forget what he is, for the blood he carries is part of him. And Siro looks at his transformed hands, and the elder says that this blood will become his greatest weapon. With the training session over, Argel decides it's time for a meal, and the boy agrees. At that moment, Morgan arrives with roasted monster meat, offering it to them as a token of his gratitude. Siro notices that Morgan's men are not eating and asks if everything is okay, but the old man tells him not to worry. And so elsewhere, Roseanne and her gang confront Morgan's men, demanding that they hand over whatever they have. Morgan's man tells her not to act like everything is hers, but Roseanne mocks him for suddenly acting like a good guy, and so looks past him with a sinister smile, surprised to see that he is still alive after their last encounter. He reluctantly hands over his findings, understanding that he has no choice but to comply with their demands. Another of Morgan's men brings in the bodies of the fallen, adding them to the pile, and so he explains that one of the bodies belongs to a member of the circle who died in the hallway the day before, and Siro is horrified to realize they are trading corpses for food, and the elder confirms that they eat them as well. The old warrior explains grimly that this sort of thing happens frequently in the brutal reality of solitude. While the other inmates celebrate their disgusting harvest, Siro is overcome with nausea and vomits the meat he just ate. Morgan tells his chief to rest, as he and his men are also returning to eat. As they depart with their somber meal, Argel watches with a thoughtful expression, Sensing they've gotten the worst of it, he turns to Siro, telling him to eat all the monster meat and insects he wants, but to never become like those people. And elsewhere, another group of inmates brag about their latest kill, mocking their victims' pleas for life. They agree with their leader Beckham, that first-class prisoners are trash who can't even fight properly. At that moment the man himself, Beckham, arrives with his own circle, his presence commanding both respect and fear. He approaches Morgan and his group, who are surprised to see the leader of the third faction. The two leaders stand face to face, the tension in the air thick with unspoken rivalry and suspicion. One of Morgan's men is surprised that Beckham is willing to share food and loot, as their circles don't get along. The man explains that this isn't always the case, as Beckham never starts fights, preferring to keep everyone under his control. And so he then reveals that the other leader wants to speak to their boss, and asks if they should go together. And the elder tells Siro to go back alone while he goes to meet Beckham. But the boy hesitates, and Siro sits with his guards, who complain about being stuck babysitting a kid while everyone else is at Beckham's banquet. One of them looks at the boy with hungry eyes, commenting that his meat must be good and tender, and so other warns him to stop drooling, reminding him that if their captain finds out, his own flesh will end up on Roseanne's plate. And Siro is left alone with his dark thoughts, wondering if he can become as strong as the old man in a place like this. He remembers his earlier conversation with the elder, who asked if it was his first time seeing someone truly strong. The boy had eagerly confirmed, even asking if the old warrior was not human due to his incredible power. Argel had simply stated that he was human, but Siro insisted, asking if he could use energy or mana. The elder had explained that although he couldn't use mana, he could control energy to a certain extent. Siro, full of curiosity, had excitedly told him that he had many more questions to ask. He had asked about the old man's age, and Argel had simply replied that he was 88. And so, when asked about hobbies, he said he didn't have any, but he took walks in the hallway when he couldn't sleep. The boy then asked if he had any friends, and the old man replied that some were cold on the outside but warm on the inside, and one even looked like a bear. Finally, Siro had asked the hardest question of all, why he had come to Solitude in the first place. A dark silence had fallen between them, a bloody image flashing through the old warrior's mind. He had simply stated that his wife had died, a truly beautiful woman who was always smiling, before saving the rest for another time. So back in the present, Siro is startled by a sudden noise, his eyes moving in alarm. He senses danger approaching, his instincts on high alert as he prepares for a possible attack. A whip cracks through the air, and Siro finds himself surrounded by Roseanne and her gang. The boy is thrown away by the force of the attack, hitting the unforgiving prison floor hard. Roseanne looks at him, a predatory smile on her face as she asks where the old man they're looking for is, and she mockingly calls him a puppy, and the boy panics, his mind racing as he tries to figure out what to do. He realizes with a shock of terror that the old man is not here to protect him, leaving him completely alone and vulnerable. With a demonic smile, the woman beckons him closer, and the boy desperately tries to find a way to survive this new threat. Siro grits his teeth, enduring the painful lash as he is thrown backward by the force. The red-haired woman comments on her surprising resilience, wondering what has changed since her panic attack the day before. Terrified, the boy begs her to stop, warning her that something terrible will happen if she lays another hand on him. Roseanne scoffs at his words, questioning if it's a threat and teasing him to hurry up as she's getting bored. She encourages him to bark, and a red aura erupts around Siro as his body begins to transform once more. With a sinister smile, she mentions being sad lately cause all her other pets have been dying one by one. She then swings her whip again, hoping this new pet will be able to take a little more than the others. The whip wraps tightly around the young man's ankle, trapping him completely, and so the woman pulls him off the ground, throwing him across the cell floor with a powerful pull of her whip. He flies through the air completely defenseless while Roseanne is below amidst a fiery, intimidating aura, and she pins the defeated boy to the ground with her foot, wondering when the old man will finally make his move. Meanwhile, Argel sits with Morgan and Beckham over a meal, finding the whole situation interesting. And so, Beckham notices that the elder came to this cell shortly after hunting in the corridors, and then asks him a question, and the swordsman points out that there is no class number written on Argel's neck like the other prisoners. The elder explains that it has been a while, but initially, the prison did not assign any class numbers. Morgan comments on how strong he must be, but Argel dismisses his past exploits as ancient history. The three powerful inmates continue their silent meeting amidst the desolate, metallic landscape of the prison. Beckham reflects on the elder's story, noting that it's the first time he's seen a survivor without a class number, and so he remembers the story of him fighting alone against jungle natives, and his expression suddenly becomes serious. A bright glint appears in his eye as he decides he must test the mysterious old man's strength for himself. Morgan shivers, wondering what that sudden chill was and blaming it on not having eaten properly lately. The old man then says goodbye to leave, and Beckham asks why he is leaving so early without even eating, and so Argel explains that he has a child to care for, but he will take the monster meat with him as he leaves. Beckham thinks to himself that although Margan didn't feel it, the old man showed no reaction to his killing intent. The swordsman watches him go, his expression serious as he swears he remembers the name Argel. Meanwhile, Cyril lies chained and defeated on the ground as one of Rosanne's men congratulates her. The red-haired woman smiles with joy, her henchmen praising the new pet as perfect for their taste. The boy stands still, his body aching too much to even make a sound as he wonders how much he will fight. He thinks that if he just acts like a pet, maybe it won't hurt as much, and maybe he'll see his brother again someday. Suddenly, one of her men rushes in, and she angrily asks if he wants to be killed for being so loud. The man nervously reports that the old man has appeared, causing a spark of hope to ignite in Ciro's eyes. The henchman stutters, trying to explain that there is a big problem with his unexpected visitor. With a terrified expression, he reveals that the old warrior is not alone, that the woman is stunned to see Argel before her, supported by the full force of the other two circles. Margan shouts to Rosanne from the crowd, saying that she doesn't seem to value her life, and she calls him a parasite and dares him to attack if he's so confident, but he bristles at her disrespect. The elder tells his ally to calm down, stating that he will speak to the woman directly. He stands alone in the open area, looking at her and demanding that she return his friend. Rosanne refuses, declaring that the boy is hers, as she took him, and blaming Argel for not protecting him. The old warrior finds his reasoning completely absurd, his expression hardening at his twisted logic, and Argel tells the woman that she doesn't understand the boy's true value, using him only to get her attention. And so with a grim expression, the old warrior warns her that having that child with her means she will surely die. Rosanne scoffs at his threat, confident that only someone like Margan would fall for such an obvious bluff. Enraged, Margan offers to rescue the child and bring her the woman's head, but Argel says it is not necessary. The big man is completely confused when his boss simply turns and starts walking away with the group. The elder explains that it's okay to take Ciro back slowly, because they won't kill him. In fact, he clarifies that they shouldn't even have been able to kill the boy in the first place. He knows the merchandise will be kept safe, as the director himself is observing the situation. As the group walks away, Argel stops for a moment, lost in thought in the middle of the great hall. He finds himself alone in a long silent hallway, pondering the recent turn of events, and the old warrior comments that it has been a long time since he and a certain person met. A mysterious dark-haired figure appears, asking has any friends, and he admits he has some cold ones but warm ones. He notes that she must have seen him in passing, identifying her as one of his few friends. A beautiful woman named Chris materialized before him, surrounded by a glowing light blue aura. She explains that the atmosphere was too intense to ignore, so she came to say hello and check on his health. And the elder admits that he is worried, as the time he has been given does not seem very long, and Chris volunteers to clear out the troublesome elements in the cell, noticing the presence of several demon worshippers. However, Argel refuses his offer, worried that his merchandise might get caught in the crossfire and die. The woman smiles warmly, mentioning that she is going to see her sister and asking him to give her his regards. She then hugs the old warrior, telling him to let her know if he needs anything, as he is her benefactor. As she disappears, the old warrior is left floating in a sea of blue energy, deep in thought. He reflects that, no matter his current situation, he cannot go so far as to ask a child for help. Standing alone in a dark, tech hallway, he admits to himself that he has aged. His restraints crackle with electricity as he realizes he can no longer tackle everything head-on like he used to. However, as lightning flashes through his hand, he knows that what he needs to do is not completely impossible. He realizes there is no need to hold back his strength, for the bodies of his fallen enemies lie all around him. With a surge of power, lightning crackles around his single spiral blade, ready for action. Argel unleashes his power, his form a whirlwind of blue energy as he prepares for the coming battle. Meanwhile, Rosanne walks down a dark metallic corridor, her thoughts wandering to her own past. She remembers that she was once just an ordinary Class 3 prisoner, her arm bleeding from a fresh wound, and she was just another face in the crowd, struggling to survive in the brutal prison. That all changed when she met that person, a massive, intimidating figure with immense power, and she was so overwhelmed by his presence that she instinctively knelt at his feet, unable to even make eye contact. And so, it was that person's authority that allowed him to rise to his current position of power within the prison. One of her men calls out to her, waking her from a deep sleep, and she sleepily asks what he wants. The man nervously apologizes, but insists that she needs to confirm something immediately. She threatens to blow him up if it's nothing important, but he urgently tells her that all his men have been eliminated. He explains that when they woke up, everyone was already dead, and the red-haired leader is completely stunned. She asks what he's talking about, knowing that everyone wakes up at the same time due to the anti-standing system. And so with a look of growing horror, she realizes that a surprise attack while they slept should be impossible. She is faced with the grim outcome, realizing that out of 100 of her men, 40 are now dead. One of his subordinates notices that they were all killed with a sharp, awl-like weapon he had never seen before. A dark thought crosses her mind as she connects the unique weapon to a certain old man. She runs furiously after the boy, demanding to know where that brat is. Convinced this is the old man's doing, she looks at the remains of the boy's restraints. With a look of pure determination, she gathers her remaining men and declares it's time to begin the hunt. And so meanwhile Sura wakes up and finds himself safe with Arjul, who asks if his consciousness has returned. The boy lowers his head in shame, realizing that the old man has saved him once again. He tells the elder that after everything he has been through, he finally understands that he must protect himself. The young man clenches his fists, a new determination burning within him as he addresses the old warrior. Wide-eyed and determined, he declares that he wants to become stronger, no matter what the cost. At that moment, Morgan arrives, asking why the boy is there and reminding his boss that it is roll call time. The elder explains that he has brought the boy and that the three of them have something important to discuss. Roseanne and her large group march through the prison, their anger and determination clear on their faces. They arrive at the common area to find the other two circles already gathered, waiting for them. Arjul is with Beckham and Morgan, the three leaders ready for the inevitable showdown. The red-haired woman yells at the damn old man to come out and face her, her voice filled with rage, and she tells Morgan to shut up, declaring that her only business is with the old man who crossed her. She accuses him of eliminating her subordinates and kidnapping her boy, her anger reaching its peak, and the elder calmly looks at her, asking if he should kill her too and place her on the dinner table. Arjul calls her loud for not understanding the situation, but she demands to know what he just said. With a stern expression, he simply repeats that she is loud, his voice cutting through the tension. The red-haired woman trembles with rage, unable to form a coherent response to his calm rejection. The elder then turns to the other two leaders, asking their opinions on the proposal he just made. Morgan quickly agrees, stating that it is her boss's proposal and very welcome to his circle. And Beckham also agrees, noting that while there may be downsides, the potential reward is worth the risk. The elder then turns to the confused Roseanne, explaining that he was making a proposal to the other two circles, and he calmly suggests that since 40 of their men are already dead, they should have a feast and capture the remaining 60 as slaves. The red-haired woman is completely stunned by his audacious proposal, her mind spinning with the implications. A cold sweat runs down her face as she realizes the terrible reality of her situation. Each of the three circles had 100 members, maintaining a delicate balance of power. But now, thanks to the old man's actions, many of his forces are dead, and the balance has been broken. The new alliance now has a combined strength of 200, while their circle is left with a mere 60. And she realizes this creates a power gap too big to handle, and a reflection of her defeat appears in her eye. An overwhelming sense of fear comes over her as she looks at the massive army that now stands against her. Your mind goes blank, unable to think of any possible way to escape this hopeless situation, and she knows there is no way to win against forces more than 3 times her own. As the massive army advances, Arjul leads the charge, his form a blur of incandescent fury, and so, the two sides clash in a brutal and bloody battle, the sounds of fighting echoing throughout the prison. Roseanne's forces are quickly overwhelmed, their bodies torn apart by the sheer number of their opponents. Roseanne fights desperately, swinging her whip in a bloody frenzy as she is completely surrounded and subdued. In the chaotic confusion, a sharp blade finds its target, piercing the red-haired woman's chest. She is quickly surrounded and stabbed from all sides, her body falling amidst the relentless attack. Arjul watches the grim scene from afar, calmly commenting that he had already warned her of this fate. After the battle, he enters a hidden chamber and finds a strange altar with a glowing red orb, a clear sign of demon worshippers. He picks up the object, identifying it as a life force orb and noting that they have been gradually collecting them. As you hold the orb, a powerful red energy emanates from the altar, completely surrounding you. And so the elder looks irritated, realizing that getting involved in such troublesome matters will likely delay his meeting with the director. He then speaks to the orb, calling out to someone named Darkis and asking if he is listening. And so Arjul recalls his previous encounter with Saddle, who was linked to a ghost, and mentions that he severed that connection. He warns Darkis to stop pursuing him, telling the demon worshipper that he will regret it if he continues. A new, deep voice suddenly speaks from the altar, dismissing the old warrior's words as boring talk. The massive demonic figure of Darkis appears, taunting Arjul and asking if he is afraid. The elder retorts, asking if he looks like someone who would fear him, and begins to crush the orb of life force in his hand. With a final decisive squeeze, he shatters the orb, warning that if Darkis pursues him, he will die without fail. Elsewhere in a luxurious room, a long-haired red-eyed man sits calmly, drinking from a fancy goblet. This powerful figure is revealed to be the vampire king Indurus, a terrifying and highly placed Class 8 prisoner. When anyone tries to approach, the vampire king angrily tells them to get lost, threatening to kill everyone in the room. Suddenly, Darkis appears before him, calmly stating that he has something to discuss with Indurus. The demon commander, also a Class 8 prisoner, reveals that he has a proposition for the vampire king. The vampire king calmly sips his drink, commenting that, as always, the demon commander has no manners. Darkus reminds him that they both serve the Void constellation and insists that the proposal is good for him as well. The massive demon commander then makes his request, asking for help in capturing the old warrior, Argel. However, Endurus categorically refuses, stating that among users of black magic there is no true master-disciple relationship. He advises the demon to give up, claiming that the old man is completely out of his league, which infuriates Darkus, and so the commander warns the Vampire King that there will come a time when he will regret making this choice. With a menacing, toothy grin, Darkus declares that he will simply capture Algiers himself. The Vampire King just smiles back, sarcastically wishing him the best of luck in his foolish endeavor. Darkus then disappears in a vortex of dark energy, leaving the luxurious room in sudden silence. Endurus mocks the demon's arrogance, calling him an insolent brat who still doesn't understand his own position. He reflects that any prisoner who rises through the ranks of Solitude eventually learns the name Argel Rastos. The Vampire King wonders how a mere human managed to survive in this hellish prison for decades. Meanwhile, the new alliance celebrates their victory with a huge banquet, shouting about finally being able to eat. While the allied circles lost 20 men each, Rosna's circle suffered 30 more deaths, including her own. One of Beckham's men reports that the rest of the defeated inmates were all tied up and guarded. Morgan raises his food in a toast, thanking his boss for helping them get rid of the arrogant Rosna. Beckham watches the old man drink blood like water, and Argel simply comments that it's not bad. The old warrior refuses the offer of meat, explaining that he has no appetite after moving so much, and Beckham is impressed by the man's power and formally asks if he would be willing to join his circle. Morgan then reveals his plan to unite the lower-class prisoners to fight the middle-class inmates in the next release. However, Argel calmly declines the proposal, his expression unreadable as he looks at Beckham. The swordsman asks why, and the elder explains that he is too old for such grand things and that he will support him. He then turns to Morgan and clarifies that he has no intention of joining her circle either, much to her surprise. Beckham asks if he's coming with them, but Argel simply excuses himself, saying he's busy taking care of a child. The two powerful leaders could only stare in confusion, both wondering why he would be caring for a child. 6 days later, the old warrior and Sero are back in training, and it's time for the boy to tap into his inner self again. Sero asks why he has to walk through his memories, and the elder explains that it is to know what he truly desires. With that, they begin their meditation, both sitting cross-legged in silent concentration. The boy finds himself back in the dark, watery expanse of his own mind, a familiar but unsettling place. He remembers that this is his 8th time entering his inner self, and this time, he must try to walk forward continuously. He remembers that all of Argel's training was focused on inner cultivation, forcing him to confront painful memories. As he walks, he is bombarded with visions of his past, his mother begging him to return while his father blocks the door. And so the boy realizes that he would rather be beaten and feel physical pain than relive these traumatic experiences. He sees memories of being separated from loved ones, his home being destroyed by massive war machines, but he forces himself to move on, trusting that the old man has a reason for making him do so. The elder's voice echoes in his mind, reminding him to never look down when he is in the darkness. With new determination, the boy nods, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination as he thinks of the old man. He continues his long and arduous walk through the dark void, overcoming pain and memories. After what seems like an eternity, he reaches the edge of a cliff, a dead end with nowhere else to go. At that moment, the elder's voice commands him to continue if he truly wants to become strong, leaving the boy terrified. Sweat runs down his face as he admits he is scared, but knows he must become strong. He takes a deep breath, determined not to lose any more precious people in his life. And so with a renewed sense of purpose, he steps off the cliff, reminding himself that he'll be okay as long as he doesn't look down. But as he falls, his eyes widen in terror as he realizes he is not alone in the dark abyss. And something is there at his feet, a vortex of dark purple energy that seems to be calling to him. A voice echoes from the darkness, greeting him after a long time. The voice expresses its sadness that he has not called her until now, and the boy realizes that it is speaking to him. He nervously tries to respond, but the voice asks if he can hear it or if he is ignoring it again. And the dark entity blames him for the suffering of his people, and the boy is stunned by the accusation. He claims that if he had not been so selfish, his people would not have died, and they suffered because of him. A massive, multi-eyed demonic creature emerges from the darkness, its presence overwhelming and terrifying. The boy struggles to breathe, the immense pressure crushing him as he begs for the pain to stop. His eyes widen in pure terror, the psychic attack becoming too much for him to bear. He lets out a final, agonizing scream as the darkness threatens to consume him completely. Just as he is about to be pulled into the abyss, a hand reaches out and grabs him, pulling him back to safety. His body transforms, his features becoming more savage as he grits his teeth against the overwhelming pain. Back in the real world, the boy collapses on the ground as the elder stands over him, the intense training session finally over. Argel congratulates him, a small smile on his face as he looks at the exhausted but transformed boy, and Suro looks at his own body, shocked to see that he has grown and become more powerful after facing the darkness within. The old warrior looks up with a serious expression, feeling that the time for his next challenge has finally arrived. The elder tells the boy to follow him, promising to teach him what he truly desires. Suro is confused, his mind still reeling from the intense training as he wonders what it is he wants. Arjul looks at him with a serious expression, proposing a fight to teach him how to fight. He then floats in the air, his body weightless as he prepares for his first combat lesson. The boy is shocked as a fist flies towards his face, his mind struggling to process the sudden attack. But his instincts kick in, and he manages to dodge the punch, surprised by his own newfound reflexes. However, the elder is relentless, landing a powerful blow that knocks the young man back. He falls hard to the ground, and Arjul explains that to become skilled in combat, several methods are necessary. The first and most important thing is to learn to fight with pure, unadulterated instinct. The two clash in a hail of blows, the elder pushing his new student to his absolute limits. He tells the boy to draw out the wild instincts within himself and use them to their fullest potential. The old warrior notes that while Suro's power is good, his movements are too obvious and easy to predict. He easily counters the boy's attack, knocking him away once more with a well-placed blow. Arjul tells him to stop thinking and simply follow his impulses, embracing his wild nature. He urges the boy to fight with the feeling that he will crush everything in his path, unleashing his true power. As they continue their intense combat, the boy's attacks become faster, more fluid, and much more unpredictable. The elder notices that his student's attacks are no longer focused solely on his head, but have spread throughout his body. He notices that the boy has begun to use pure intuition instead of his head, a sign of his growing talent. Arjul is impressed, admitting that being able to immediately put his teachings into practice is a rare gift. The two continue their intense training, the sounds of their battle echoing through the desolate prison. The elder then reveals the second method to become skilled in combat. He lands another powerful blow, knocking the boy back in a blast of fiery energy. And so, Arjul explains that there is a dimensional difference between those who have experienced suffering and those who have not. He continues his relentless attack, forcing his student to endure pain and push his limits. The young man struggles to defend himself, his body battered and bruised from intense training. Finally he collapses on the floor, completely exhausted and unable to move another muscle. A warm orange glow begins to emanate from his body, enveloping him in an aura of fire, and the elder watches with a thoughtful expression, wondering if the boy will be able to return to his normal self. The fire energy intensifies, consuming the boy's body as the transformation reaches its peak, and so Arjul kneels beside him, deciding that the third method will have to wait for another time. He looks at the unconscious boy, wondering how much he will be able to grow from this point. As the boy sleeps, the old warrior admits to himself that he is eager to see his student's progress. Suro finds himself in a dream, a vision of an old memory of his younger self running to his mother. He sees himself fishing with his father, a peaceful and happy time long ago. The dream then changes, and he remembers a time when his father always favored his older brother. He remembers the feeling of being unloved, watching his father and brother walk away without him, and the young man stands alone in the darkness, the weight of his sad memories pressing down on him. Tears stream down his face as he realizes that all he wants is to see his father again. Back in the real world, he wakes up and finds himself sitting next to Arjul, who notices his rapid recovery, and so the elder explains that they are on the roof of a building and tells him to focus on the prisoners below. The boy uses his newly enhanced senses, his eyes glowing as he looks down at the prisoners below. He wonders why everyone is sleeping, and the elder confirms that it is now bedtime for the inmates. Arjul then asks his young student how it feels to have overcome the prison's anti-stand system. He explains that only those who have truly faced the darkness within themselves can overcome prison regulations. The young man looks at his hands in wonder, wondering if he too can now be like the old man. The elder silently observes that the merchandise is growing much faster than he had originally anticipated. He thinks the boy's growth means he must be exchangeable for the medicine needed to sustain his own body. The old warrior clutches his chest, knowing his weakened body has overused its strength for too long. He thinks about all the recent troubles, like the necromancer saddle and the whip-wielding woman Rosna. He also remembers his recent encounter with the powerful commander of the demon worshipper sect, Darkus, and so the elder concludes that encountering the dangerous people he has avoided for so long was probably inevitable. Elsewhere, an inmate carefully polishes his large blade, preparing for the upcoming event, and so other prisoners are also preparing, with a leader telling them not to let their guard down. Morgan reflects on her 3 years of survival, feeling that she now understands the intuition needed for this day. He is ready and determined, vowing to skillfully pass the upcoming challenge once again. Sero notices that everyone seems busy, and the elder confirms that today is Liberation Day. The old warrior explains that it is a system designed for the prisoners to anticipate, and many will die today. And suddenly, they both look up, a strange and unexpected phenomenon taking them completely by surprise. Sero recognizes the light of the call, and the elder notices that the release is beginning sooner than expected. A system announcement declares that the release begins now, as a large, glowing portal appears in the air. Argel and Sero look up as a massive, high-tech structure materializes in the sky, bathing them in a brilliant, colorful light. A towering column of golden, hexagonal energy erupts from the ground, identified as Lower Corridor 8972. The other prisoners are enveloped in the intense light, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion as the event unfolds. The elder explains that this is liberation, a system that forces all inmates out of their cells and into the hallways. He warns that the corridors are dangerous places full of monsters, but they also present a great opportunity. Argel then senses a new threat approaching and tells Sero to prepare as the first wave of enemies arrives. A group of small, goblin-like creatures armed with sharp daggers suddenly rushes toward them from the light. A massive horde of creatures emerges from the portal, their high-pitched screeches filling the entire area. The young man is completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of monsters charging straight at them. The old warrior calmly tells his student to prepare himself, for today they will finally experience real combat. Suddenly a horde of goblins appears out of nowhere, charging towards them. With that, our hero is completely paralyzed with fear at the scene he sees. And then the old man beside him tells him to get ready because today they will see a real fight. And so rest of the crew also panics when they see that they are surrounded by an absurd amount of monsters. In this, our protagonist prepares to fight, wielding his dagger and filling himself with courage. He stays focused and realizes that the goblins have finally arrived to attack. And so his master then shouts for everyone to fight desperately if they don't want to die there. At this moment a chaotic battle begins with everyone fighting for their lives. The hero follows the advice and stops thinking about just killing the monsters out of pure instinct. The only thing that goes through the young man's head now is the word survive, and his eyes show that he has entered a state of pure fury and despair. But in the middle of the fight he sees a small goblin child, and for a moment he hesitates. His hesitation was a fatal mistake as two other goblins took advantage to attack him. The protagonist then realizes that it was all just a very well-planned trap. And so with that, our hero finds himself in a very complicated situation in the middle of the battle. But before he can be caught, the old man appears and saves our hero from the monster's attack. Then the master advises him not to hesitate and says that he needs to get used to killing. He explains that in this kind of place, you either kill or you die. There is no other option. The old man says that to survive he needs to discard his emotions and get used to it. With that, more goblins advance towards our hero to try to finish him off once and for all. The master then explains that the difference in combat power between them can exceed 10 times, and so there is no reason to be afraid of them just because they are in greater numbers. Meanwhile, the muscular man of the group destroys the goblins easily without any difficulty. The other companion also says that goblins are so weak that they can't even be classified, and that's why they are just obstacles that serve to hinder the growth of everyone there. And after a while the goblin horde is finally completely defeated by them. With the path clear, they continue walking through the place in search of a safe exit. At that moment they arrive at a fork in the road, and the man with glasses asks which way they will go. The big one suggests the wider path, but the other says the narrow path is better to avoid battles. But the one with glasses retorts saying that narrow places are guarded by stronger monsters. The muscular man continues the discussion and says that the other's path is dangerous and that he has more experience. But ignoring the fight, the old man tells our hero to follow him when he runs, leaving the young man confused. And so without warning the master takes off with the boy right behind him. And so with that, the two companions are shocked to be left behind and call out for their older brother. After running a lot, the protagonist falls to the ground exhausted, asking the old man to wait. The young man then asks why they separated, and the master says that in a group they are easier targets. He continues explaining that the best strategy is to look for the cells separately, but the others insisted on staying together. At this point our hero remembers that those two men were always arguing about something. The old man comments that even after 3 years, fear is a feeling that should never be forgotten. However, he couldn't see any hint of fear in those two, which left the boy thoughtful. The protagonist then asks if there is something behind the discussion, and the master praises his deduction. The old man just looks ahead, and it seems that the answer to the question is no longer necessary. Elsewhere we see a vampire-looking man calmly drinking a glass of wine. Then we see the man with glasses with an evil smile saying as expected, "Old man." And so suddenly they appear with a group and say that the count asked to escort him, but the old man refuses the offer. Then the master says that if the count wants to see him, he should come here himself. At this the man with glasses gets angry and calls him an insolent old man while threatening him with his sword. At this point, our hero is terrified by the situation and wonders what is happening. He feels an oppressive presence that grows stronger as they approach, and then the hero realizes that the smell of blood he smelled before was because his true identity is that of a vampire. Suddenly the boy releases all his power and enters his beast form. The vampire then realizes he is a werewolf, but the old man asks if the boy just looks like a werewolf to him, and so it is revealed that our hero's brother was a werewolf, but the young man's blood is different. It turns out that a while ago he was bitten by someone on his neck. With that he became a pure-blooded lycanthrope, which is something extremely rare. And now in his new form our hero looks much stronger and more menacing. His master is impressed that he has grown so much even in a crisis situation. He then realizes that as expected the boy actually has a very useful talent. And seeing the situation, the master also prepares for the fight and holds his weapon tightly. He then advances saying that he will take care of the weaker henchman first. The master then shouts to the hero to watch out for Beckham as he charges into the fight. With that, the young lycanthrope goes after the vampire, who is surprised by his strength. Meanwhile the old man faces the henchman alone in a bloody battle. But even though he is strong, he ends up being injured and surrounded by an army of enemies. At that moment the henchmen smell blood and start to go crazy. They say the smell is sweet and fight among themselves to drink the master's blood. Seeing the situation, the old man finds himself in trouble in the middle of that confusion of enemies. The fight between our hero and the vampire continues and Beckham seems to be having fun. The villain then says that he now understands why the count wanted the old man because of his blood. A macabre smile appears on the vampire's face, who seems to be thirsty for more. He then shouts that he will kill the old man quickly so he can taste his blood. But first he decides he needs to take care of the obstacle that is in his way first. With that, the vampire advances with everything towards our hero to finish him off. The protagonist defends himself from the attack by creating a large explosion of energy. But Beckham finds a way through and tells the young man that he has now caught him. But to Beckham's surprise, our hero punches him through the chest with a single punch. With that, the vampire is in shock without understanding what just happened. The young man then regenerates his arm and Beckham asks what the hell he really is. Next we see that the hero blocked the vampire's attack with his own body. Beckham is excited about the boy's strength and says he needs to be as strong as he is. But suddenly the master appears and stabs him from behind, taking him by surprise. The vampire then spits blood and falls to the ground completely defeated by the old man. In his last moments he wonders how the master killed 80 people in an instant. In this we see that the floor is covered with the bodies of all the villain's henchmen. So Beckham then realizes that from the beginning he was never a match for the old man. The master approaches his disciple and says that 3 weeks ago he would not have done anything. In his memories the young man remembers how weak and useless he was in every battle, and so now the boy can fulfill the role of a person and understands what it is like to fight together. The master praises him saying that he has improved a lot but is still not at the ideal level. Then the old man says they are late and the hero runs to change his clothes quickly. Elsewhere a servant apologizes for being late due to the release of prisoners. Count Endurus says he doesn't care and orders his servant to leave immediately. He then realizes that the telepathic connection with Beckham has been cut, and that he has been defeated. The Count blames himself for not having foreseen this because old Argel was there all along. With that he says that next time he will need to be more careful with etiquette. In a fit of rage he wonders when he can finally drink his tea in peace. Meanwhile in another corridor we see a group that has just defeated a giant ogre. An eagle man named Holok comments that they can now defeat medium-sized ogres. Meanwhile a rhinoceros man named Menlock complains that he is starving and wants to eat. But leader Lucas says their priority now is to get back to their cell safely. He then thinks of his brother Ciro and believes that he is alive because he is with old Argel. With a determined look he swears that he will not die either, and that they will meet again. Back to our hero he continues fighting against mysterious figures that attack him non-stop. The tired young man asks his master who are those guys who won't stop attacking. The old man then explains that they are black magic users from the demon worshippers organization. The protagonist wonders why those guys are chasing his master so persistently. And so, the old man says he doesn't get along with their boss, and that they need to go back to their cell soon. As they walk down the dark corridor the young man feels a very strange presence, and he comments on the bad feeling and the master reveals that they encountered a ghost. Suddenly a giant, dark monster named Goose appears in front of the do. The hero is terrified but the old man says he already has enough strength to win. Even though he is scared, the boy remembers that his master was always right and decides to fight. With that he transforms, releasing an aura of fire and showing his determination. The lycanthrope then charges forward and lands a devastating punch on the monster's face. And so he is surprised to see that his attack worked and believes he can win the battle. The creature is thrown back by the force of the impact, creating a small explosion. Feeling his immense power, the protagonist roars with fury, showing his sharp fangs. Watching the fight, the master explains that there are several reasons why prisoners die. He says the first reason the simple lack of skill in fighting ghosts, but the real cause is that the sinister aura they emit is fear itself. The master continues explaining that the weakest are crushed by fear and die. but he says that rule doesn't apply to those who have faced their own darkness. However, even with his strength, the young man cannot defeat the ghost and is thrown away. With that, the hero falls to the ground completely defeated by the dark creature. At that moment, the master decides to intervene and prepares to attack the monster. He then releases his skill and launches a powerful ice attack at the ghost. Suddenly a woman appears and asks the old man if he had any problems with his enemies. He replies that it was nothing and asks if she managed to find her sister. The woman then floats in the air with a smile and says yes. She adds that her sister was very happy with his message. Meanwhile, the ghost is completely frozen and begins to fall apart. So with a single blow, the monster is destroyed and the hero watches everything from the ground. Completely shocked, the young man wonders who that mysterious woman is. He is impressed by the power of the white-haired woman who appeared out of nowhere. The hero can't believe she defeated the ghost with a single blow. The protagonist notices that the woman seems to be very close to his master. The girl then asks for help finding her cell and the hero thanks her for being saved. And so the young man then realizes that the white-haired woman doesn't seem to like him very much. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a swordswoman complains that she has to search a huge corridor. Her name is Solverin and she doesn't like the idea of looking for someone in such a big place. The woman is also annoyed at having to partner with a weird necromancer named Saddle. Suddenly she punches her partner for acting on his own. The necromancer then remembers that old Argel severed the connection they had with the ghost. He laments that his target did not die and instead became a mindless servant. And so the swordswoman says that the order came from the Legion commander and that the reward will be great. Suddenly she feels a strange presence and her eyes shine with intensity. The woman realizes that several of her subordinates died at the same time, and so she understands that they have finally found the old man and calls her group to go after him. And we see the body of one of the subordinates who was instantly defeated by the master. Meanwhile, the trio comes across another body and the old man comments on the situation. The master asks if the woman also encountered many enemies and she confirms the attack. And so the hero watches the conversation and wonders if he will ever have a relationship like that with someone. Taking courage, the young man asks when she met the old man and if he was always so strong. With an anxious look, the boy waits for the answer from the mysterious white-haired woman. She notices the boy's interest and thinks she was just like him when she was younger. The girl then begins to tell her story, saying that it was about 7 years ago. She explains that she and her sister were falsely accused of a crime they did not commit. In one memory, she remembers that she was about to give up because of the cruel system. But in the moment of despair, the old man appeared and saved the lives of the two sisters. The woman continues saying that he helped them get to the arena so they could fight. The protagonist is surprised to hear about the arena and the girl continues her story. And suddenly the master interrupts the conversation and says that the enemies never stop coming. The hero also feels a presence approaching and warns that someone is coming. He describes a suffocating sensation as a group of hooded figures appear, and so the leader of the group then reveals that they came to capture the old man at Darkest command. The swordswoman and her group stare at the trio with a menacing and confident gaze, and so with that, she orders her subordinates to capture the old man and bring him to her immediately. And so but the white-haired woman steps forward and says she will take care of everything herself. The enemies then launch a powerful red energy attack towards the group, and so at that moment the girl turns around and says she wanted to show something to her master. She then releases an immense power of ice to show how much she has grown and become strong. In an instant the woman appears in the middle of the enemies surrounded by an aura of ice. Watching the scene, the old man comments on how time flies and seems proud. He remembers when his sisters cried in his arms and now she is a warrior. With graceful movements the girl defeats the enemies one by one with her magic. She focuses her energy into her leg and prepares for a devastating attack. The woman then crushes the ground and the old man praises how admirably she has grown. He adds that she now overflows with the refinement of a true lady. With a smile the girl activates her special ability called Snowflower Armor. A blue light surrounds her and an ice armor begins to form on her body. The ice armor materializes completely around her with an intense glow. Even surrounded by enemies, the girl wonders why the master has not yet revealed why he saved them. With her new armor and sword, she wonders if fighting is the only way to stay by his side. Our hero is left open, watching the woman create several giant ice crystals. He then asks his master how he can fight like that, but the old man remains silent. The man then explains that Alice controls the cold and that this is an ability that manipulates attributes. The young man is confused and does not understand what his master means by the word attributes. The old man begins to explain that in the universe there are the attributes of light and darkness, and so he goes on to say that there are 7 attributes in total and that Alice developed the water attribute. The master reveals that the ghost goose had the attribute of darkness and that is why he was so strong. With this, the protagonist begins to understand the power system of that strange world. But suddenly in the middle of the fight Alice notices the arrival of a much stronger enemy. A giant scary monster appears and the woman calls it the decapitator. Elsewhere a group of wizards say that ghosts like this are not easy to summon. We see that it was the necromancer Saddle who summoned the monster using his thread magic. the master says that the necromancer's abilities remain the same and tells the hero to stand in front of him. The old man explains that fighting so many powerful enemies would be too much, and so he joins his hands together. With a serious look, the man says that he will help his disciple from now on in the battle. In this way he begins a technique to connect with the young person and share all his power.